This is the Public Works Feasibility Committee meeting. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 1:02. And I'm also going to take minutes. And I can share the meeting minutes that I took from the last meeting. And I sent them out as well. If people want to look them over, we can vote on them today, or we can vote on them at the next meeting. But at some point we need to vote on approving them, and then I will give them to the town clerk.
I am fine with the meeting minutes.
Okay.
Same.
Do you want to make a motion to approve?
Motion to
I'd like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from 12/23/20.
second.
And that was that Peter Mallett? Did you second?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Glenn, did you aye?
Aye.
Okay. So we have John from Weston and Sampson here. John, we can't hear you because you're self-muted. So if you're able to unmute, there should be on your toolbar, there should be a microphone button, and you can, it's probably orange or blue for you. And if you click it, it should turn green. You should be able to speak. I think there was another person from Weston and Sampson who was going to come.
Yep, that's me, Dan Tenney.
Oh, you're here. Okay, sorry, you don't show up on the list, so I can't. Oh, there you are at the top. Great.
I just turned on the mic and the camera.
So on our side, we have myself, I'm the assistant town planner. We have Glenn McCrory, who is our highway superintendent. We have Peter Sanders, who is our water wastewater superintendent. And then Peter Mallett, you're on FinCom?
Capital planning.
Capital planning, okay. And we usually have another person here on the committee who is the tree warden and on the highway department, and he can't make the meeting today. So I guess I don't know where we want to start this conversation of what information you all need from us and kind of what our next steps should be.
Sure. John, do you want to start out? John, you might be muted.
He is muted.
How about now?
There we go.
Okay. So I think our first step would be to, we want to see if you have any plans that we can access, if you have them electronically and could send them to us of the existing facility and of the site. Any kind of plan information you might have. And what we would do is use that to plan a trip out to Irving and do an existing conditions assessment of the facility and the site. And we could do that as soon as next week. If you don't have electronic plans, we could pick them up while we're out there. And if they're hard copy plans, we could take them back and scan them. We'd like to have them in advance of the visit. That way it's just easier for us to kind of understand what we're getting into and to have something that we can kind of mark up as we're walking through the building.
Sure. Pete or Glenn, do you know what we have for plans?
I don't know if I have anything electronic. I may be able to get them though. So you want basically the plans for the plant here, the highway garage and plant?
Correct. And any plans that you have, if you have original plans or if there have been any renovations over the years, if we could have those too, if they're available.
Okay, I'll look. I may have an electronic copy. We went through an upgrade in 2009.
Okay.
Good. That
Yeah,
should be-
anything that might change, like show a, a change in the interior configuration or updated or upgraded mechanical systems, electrical, and so forth. Any information you have is useful.
yeah.
Okay.
Any property survey, whether it's just the meets and bounds or any further information would be great. I know you've recently done some clearing on the
Yes.
site, so but we'll be able to see that and get a pretty easy sense of it.
And I guess if you don't have electronic copies and you had hard copies that you could mail them, and I guess we could bill it, right, Dan? How?
Yeah, we could do that. We could actually probably send you a mailing label. See how that works. I think we can do that. If you maybe just let us know what you have, and then we can make a decision on what the best logistics would be. We don't want to put a burden on you, but
Absolutely.
as John says, if we have a chance to look over the drawings ahead of time, it does make our work a little more efficient, better use of your time when we're out there too.
Yeah, of course. Do you guys know, Glenn or Pete, do you know if we have a survey of that parcel?
I don't know if we have anything in the file cabinet, the map cabinet. I'll take a look, but that
Okay.
would be a hard copy. I don't know of anything electronic, so.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever we do have, we have a scanner at town hall and it doesn't scan, it won't scan plan size, but we could scan, parts of it and send those over or however we need to do it. But we should just pull up anything that we do have and then we can figure out how to get it to whoever needs it.
With the survey, if it's got the meets and bounds on it, even if it's kind of done in a patchwork scan, we can reconstruct that pretty easily.
Okay.
When was the facility first built?
The wastewater plant was built in 1974, 75.
Okay.
The highway garage was added on, I believe it was probably early 80s, maybe before that.
Okay. So it's probably pre-digital, unless
Yes.
you needed to do any survey work for the. You mentioned there was some work done in 2009. Was that just interior?
No, that was they actually built one building outside, a headworks building.
Okay.
And everything else was just replacement of equipment and whatnot.
Okay.
They did new MC panels in here, stuff like that. That would, and the sewer and the water haven't been touched. So those are, if I can find some old plans, especially electronic, those would be original.
Okay. Great. All right. Yeah. Any of that will help.
Okay.
Any information on your department, like organizational chart, staffing list, vehicle list?
Yeah. Vehicles and equipment, and the more detail, the better. We'll pick up whatever we can when we visit. And one thing that'll be part of our later conversations too, but if you have the information, if you have a vehicle list, are there any anticipated replacements or additions to that over the next few years? That's always the surprise, is that you've got 12, but by the time we build a new building, you got 15, and we don't want to run out of space for it. And similarly, if the staffing looks like it's going to change in any way over the foreseeable future, we know you can't predict too far ahead. But if there are anticipated, new positions or consolidations or changes of
Yeah.
job responsibility. That would help us too. Again, it helps us to not ask too many dumb questions when we come see you.
We'll ask enough of those as it is.
We got plenty of those anyway.
So I can work with Glenn and Pete Sanders to put together the staffing lists and vehicle lists. I'm sure we can export things from Dude Solutions, Glenn, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I'm sure we can get vehicle lists from Betts.
Yeah, through the insurance company, we have a whole inventory list with Maya, so Betsy should have it quick.
Right.
So I can work with you both to get that situated. One thing that I know that we've already talked about was for the office space, the highway department previously had, what was Julie's position called? Like a clerk?
Secretary.
Yeah, secretary, receptionist, whatever.
Yeah, so that position no longer exists, but we'd like to have space where if there ever was kind of a secretary position that came back, is versatile enough to have that be kind of in a central position in the office that could welcome people.
Sure.
And I can write some of this up as well.
Okay. How many people in the office now on a typical day? This is a
Well,
lead. It's a lead.
The office space themselves would just be for myself and Pete. Because if I'm correct, Pete, all the SCADA stuff is staying where it is now, correct?
Correct. Right. The only thing that would probably change is, so we do it with the dry storage with maybe a line feed over for a monitor for SCADA, not controls, just so I can view it. Other than that, yeah, the SCADA, most of the SCADA, the dialing system, all that would stay in this building.
The reason for my question about the number of people is that we are, as you're all well aware, we're in a whole new world of COVID awareness. And, honestly, as designers, we're feeling our way through what's going to come out the other side when we bring people back into offices, we bring the public back into public buildings. And so that's just some thought, how close together people are going to be, how comfortable that's going to be going forward. And if the public do come to the building, how do we keep them, how do you keep everybody, both your staff and the public, feeling safe in that process? So if there are any guidelines that the town is working under beyond typical state guidance, any initiatives that we want to kind of roll into our understanding of your needs, let us know that too.
Yeah, so far, I don't know that any of our buildings are open to the public. And that's kind of been that way throughout. We have appointments people can make, and we've kind of got a foyer in the town hall that people can come to get information or pick things up. Yeah, I don't know if that would, we can talk about that, of whether having an area that can be kind of like a foyer area that is maybe has bulletin boards or access for the public without actually going into the whole building would be useful. It may be if someone needs to pick something up to have it be, enclosed but not locked. I'm not sure. Yeah, but I can also, I think we have memos typed up of kind of what our COVID plan has been so far, so I could even forward that over to you.
Yeah, if you would, it's good for us to see, and then again, it'll help us talk with you more effectively as we move into this.
So on the DPW side of things, what's the relationship with that department in the wastewater facility next door? The SCADA connection, so it sounds like there's some need to share that information. Is there overlap?
The DPW department isn't tied into SCADA.
Okay.
So our SCADA is to remain a standalone system. It doesn't have access to internet or anything like that. Those are all recommendations from DEP and EPA, so we're kind of keeping that all separate.
You want to
Yeah.
keep the Russians out of it.
Yeah.
But operationally on the site, do you share any space or facilities or vehicles?
So
I would say-
highway department has their own vehicles. Treatment plant has used them if they need to. Where it's a very good team down there. So there's all there is a wall that separates us.
Yes.
But other than that, no, we work very well with each other.
Mhm.
But there's no shared duties or shared, you said there's a wall. So that wall is kind of like a hard wall. You have your own bathroom facilities separate from each other, that kind of stuff.
No.
No, because the highway department was an add-on. So all it is 5 bays.
Okay.
For the trucks. No office, no bathrooms, no wash bays, no facilities.
It's also a shared break room. There's no file storage. There's no IT room for any of our data infrastructure.
Okay. So everything is just was there when you built the 5 bays?
Yes.
And okay. So you share shower facilities, so forth?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Is the goal to have separate facilities or to?
No, this all started out as the town is very fortunate to have a lot of equipment, needed equipment, and it's just time that it stopped being left outside
Gotcha.
and to be put undercover.
Okay.
And then we ran into an issue with OSHA about the space where our offices were. Because of the MC panels, we're not allowed to be in there anymore. So now this dry storage has turned into a dry storage with office. So that's why.
Okay. So it's really kind of you've been getting away with these facilities for a while, but now they're not really compliant.
Yeah, we won't be giving up existing space at the current DPW. This is just an additional area for us.
Okay. And this is all going to stay on the same site.
Correct.
Yeah, I think there was initially some discussion of evaluating a second site. I think there was a addendum, I believe, that
I think it
clarified.
was either to attach it to the existing building or be a standalone.
Okay.
Right.
And the standalone is what we're looking for.
Okay,
Okay.
got it. Okay.
So the first phase is really where we gather all the information up. We do the existing conditions assessment of the building, and then we would want to schedule interviews. Similarly to how we're doing it now, we could do it over Zoom or over GoToMeeting, where we'll go through kind of, we ask a bunch of questions. We once we've had a good sense of the building itself, we've been out there, have a chance to look at your operations, and then we'll do a programming exercise where we find out from you and then from our experience out there kind of what needs to happen, or get your sense of what needs to happen, and from there we'll develop a space needs spreadsheet where we say, okay, the office needs to be a certain size, and the locker rooms need to be a certain size and have this many lockers, this many showers. So we try to scope out the spaces and then the size of those spaces, and then on the site we look at, okay, it's going to be a standalone building. Where is it going to go? Where does it make sense with the existing circulation for your department and for the water, the wastewater department? Where's parking going to go? You know, that kind of stuff. So then we start laying out concepts. Generally, that's the first phase of our exercise. And, you know, we can get that down, you know, in probably six weeks or so. And once we all come to an agreement as to this is, you know, this is the preferred option, and this size makes sense, and this layout makes sense, then we'll take it to the next level, which is the conceptual design, schematic design level, where we get more detailed. We have a cost estimate that we can apply to it. So that's our phase 2, and that's kind of more. We have geotechnical investigation included, so we want to, you know, if we determine the area or areas on the site where we think makes the most sense, we'll send a crew out there and just make sure we're not going to run into any difficulties with the soils, and the structural engineers can get information for their foundations. But that's, I guess at that point, then you can decide based on the schema. You'll have plans, you'll have elevations, sections, you'll building sections, you'll have narratives about mechanical systems and plumbing and electrical systems, and a cost estimate, and that's something that you can then take to the town meeting, or however the funding is going to work. And go ahead. And that's probably another 6 weeks or so of that.
Yeah. And just to add a little bit to what John said, the drawings that we'll produce will probably come out of a Revit model. That's a 3D model of the building. It's going to have a lot of information in it, and it can create very easily three-dimensional views, both of the exterior of the building and adjacent buildings, and the site as well. So we can we can show you what it might look like in terms of a concept, massing, and location. But it's also a great tool to produce some nice looking images for selling a project in the next stage, where you're going to need to buy-in and funding. And it can be a real big help with that. So.
Yeah, one thing that we've kind of been working on as a town has been sustainability. We just built our new library, which will be getting a LEED certification. I have background in Living Building Challenge and some other sustainability certifications. And when we were reviewing the different proposals that we had, we kind of discussed that this building probably won't pursue a certification, but we would still like to, see it be, sustainable in whatever capacity makes sense. So I think that's something that I'd just like to really drive home, is that that's going to be important. Obviously it needs to be functional and everything, but I think anything that we can do to make that happen would be good.
Absolutely. We've got a pretty good kit of parts that we can consider as things may be appropriate, as we finally lay the building out, figure out how big it's going to be, what space is available, what the budget is looking like. It can't be sustainable if it's not functional either. We take a big view of that. It's got to be an efficient, and responsive facility from the planning stage right through implementation. We do find that for the most part, a typical DPW type building that we're doing these days is upwards of 25% better than code minimums require in terms of energy performance, and the codes are getting fairly strict. So we're doing better. We can do better still, but it starts to become a steep slope in terms of cost benefit, and that's something we would discuss with you to see what's really appropriate given the scale and nature of the project.
Sure.
And really, there's some elements that are not additional cost at all. They're really part of what we typically specify.
Right, and I think part of sustainability, like you touched on, it has to be a functional building. Part of that will also be allowing for growth, so that if in 15 years we do have growth, we're not trying to build a whole new building. So I think when I say sustainability, I mean very comprehensively, not just plopping solar panels on the roof.
Correct.
We can do that.
And also, but I do agree with you, Maria. You know, that growth, but also adaptability too. It may not be growth. It may be just changing the way you operate in 15 years. There was a big push at one point for, you know, compressed natural gas vehicles, and I think that's kind of slowed down a little bit. But at one point, we were thinking about how do we design these maintenance bays to support both, you know, diesel and gas vehicles, and then lighter than air natural gas vehicles, which have different requirements for electrical at different heights, depending on where the gas settles. So, you know, thinking about 15 years from now, are you going to have an electric fleet, not, you know, not a diesel fleet?
Right.
And then how can you adapt those spaces at that time? You know, we're not going to build necessarily electrical charging stations everywhere, but
considering maintenance as well, I mean, obviously the highway department houses building and grounds, so they're the most familiar with it. But I think, you know, we've already found some things that we would change with the library, or at least that Glenn would change with, you know, snow falling off the roof onto walkways and things like that. So just, you know, paying attention to those details of, okay, well, when snow falls off the roof, where does it end up? If we're plowing, where does the snow end up? Things like that.
Yeah, that's something we do sort of as part of our programming and planning process, is to look not only at the individual rooms and spaces inside the building, but the site as well. And that has to do with parking, circulation, bulk storage, and snow storage. You know, you'd be surprised how often that does not get really considered. And what ends up happening is that they say, well, just put it in the corner of the parking lot. Well, what about the vehicles that were supposed to park there? And now we can't turn the trucks around because, you know, Joe put his pickup there. It becomes a functional problem, and we try to keep that all in view so it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
now, how do you treat your roads currently? Is it with sand or with like a brine or salt or everything?
So historically, it was a sand salt mix. This year, we switched over to a treated salt for the first time. So we've used very, very, very little sand. So this is the first year of a treated salt, and it's gone very well. I'm hoping it's the direction that we can stay in. Save on a lot of, you know, roadside maintenance also.
Keeps your catch basins a little cleaner, I would think.
Correct.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of sort of movement in different departments towards, not always towards brine. I mean, brine tends to get the people very gets their attention because it changes your road, your snow clearing and storm preparation procedures quite a bit, and it's not necessarily a complete substitute. It doesn't keep you from having to plow or from having to necessarily spread salt after a storm or during a storm, but it can change the whole profile of how you operate.
It has.
Do folks from our side have other questions or things they want to highlight of importance to them?
Well, I do have a question. I know these charging stations are popping up all over the place. Is it something that's required on new construction now in a building like this to have one?
Not by building code. It may be, and I'm not as familiar with LEED as I once was. It may be a requirement for a LEED, but I'm not positive. Or it may be an elective for LEED, but it's not required as far as I know currently.
Still elective for LEED. Some municipalities may be requiring it. And it may be part of a trade-off with parking space requirements and things like that. It's, you know, we recommend it, but the problem is figuring out what it's really going to be for. Because it's one thing to have a convenience charging station that a visitor might use or one employee might use, or if there's a single town vehicle that needs it. But once you start looking at the fleet, of multiple vehicles and heavier vehicles with a much higher charging load, then it gets to be a pretty complicated conversation, because you gotta, really when you're considering it, one of the first phone calls is to the power company and find out how much power they can give you. Because if you're charging a large heavy fleet, all at once, like in an overnight scenario, you need a huge amount of power. And it's different from a small number of lightweight vehicles. So a lot of cities and towns now, you see it everywhere, have small SUVs or other electric vehicles or hybrids that they charge. Those are kind of administrative vehicles, but not the heavy service vehicles yet, but that's coming. Those are pretty easy to deal with. You put in a charging station or two, and that doesn't really change the size of your electric service all that much. But beyond that, it's a bigger conversation. So that's not a clear answer to your question, I know.
That's
One
what
thing
I was curious.
Go ahead.
No, I was just curious if they're making requirements on new constructions like that now. That's all.
One thing
Yeah.
that I'm particularly interested in is, are there ways that we can run conduit or have it be ready to have an electrified fleet, but not necessarily install like transformers and everything that we would need to do that? Because I do feel strongly that if we're building a building that we're going to use for the next 50 years as a highway department, an electrified fleet is coming. And so maybe it doesn't make sense right now to have, put in all of this effort. I don't know how much it would cost or anything, but to have the ability to retrofit it to do that without disturbing the whole building.
Yeah. I think the answer is you can probably do that part.
Nothing out of the ordinary.
Fairly easily. But you have to say, okay, we're going to reserve a spot on the site for a bigger transformer.
Yeah, my dad's in a meeting.
A spot in the building for some switchgear, and then run conduit
Well, this is
between
the most convenient spot.
wherever you might be charging vehicles, and then leave it to that. So that you have at least the baseline infrastructure ready to go. But again, there are a lot of questions still to answer, and the charging technology is changing. Right now we plug things in, or we have, in case of transit buses, they have a catenary, the pantograph on top of the bus that contacts a wire, either a continuous one or just at a charging station. There are also wireless ones that are, either flat to the floor, or I'm sure in future will be built into the floor. So just like your iPhone, you charge your iPhone and your car at the same time. So what we see physically is going to be different from what we see today, if we're thinking 10 or 15 years down the road. So it's a little bit of guesswork, but we'll try to work with you to come up with intelligent recommendations as to what we ought to do now to keep you at least ready for the future.
Solar panels, you mentioned that earlier, but building code does require that the roofs are designed to support solar panels, which isn't very difficult to do, but we have to identify a solar ready area on the roof. That will kind of influence maybe how we site the building and orientate it to maximize the future installation of solar panels, which, the cost of those panels is coming down by the day. To supplement the energy use of the building, for sure. I don't know if that's something that you'd want to do now, or be ready to put that in, but that's something that's easily kind of planned for and required now by energy code, at least to have that roof area identified and able to support panels.
Yeah, I think when you guys do interviews with people, I think that's something that I would like to focus on, is the sustainability aspect, because in my opinion, a lot, like having solar panels on the roof is almost non-negotiable to me. Electric energy is only as clean as where it's coming from. So I think that there are, like, to me, that's kind of the low-hanging fruit, is if we're able to have, passive solar or solar panels. But again, this is the highway department and the water and wastewater folks are going to be in the building. So I think I can offer my suggestions and guidance of what I would like to see as the planner, but ultimately it needs to be functional and, financially make sense and everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there a generator now? Standby generator, emergency? There is one for the water operation.
I didn't quite hear you.
Is there a standby or emergency generator?
Right now we're in the process of replacing it. What we're putting in will be a 200 kW.
Okay.
We used to have a 150 to run the plant. The plant has been, since the upgrade, the primary stuff has been offline. So the 150 was plenty, but we decided to go with the 200 for future use because of this new building. We're hoping to maybe tie that in.
Yep. Okay. Because that, the generator, it's an interesting opportunity too, which, and we're having more recently conversations about combinations of generators and batteries, which can together offer a fairly interesting solution to your, not only your emergency, power requirements, but also give you some potential cost savings, depending on whether your electric utility will let you sign on and do load sharing or load shedding, which would mean that you run your own emergency or backup power when they have a brownout or they're anticipating one. You shut off from the grid. Therefore, they don't have to build extra generating capacity, and they'll give you a break on your baseline electric bill. So there's an interesting kind of picture there that we could consider as we get into this. We wouldn't be able to fully engineer it at this early stage, but we could point to a potential opportunity that would be developed further in final design.
That's right. We can allocate space for the battery packs. They're coming down in price as well, and increasing in efficiency. Similarly to computer memory. So, 5 years from now, you'll be able to spend half as much and get 5 times the storage, but have that space available so that you can take advantage of it when you need to add on that capacity.
We'd leave space for solar equipment too, for the inverters, panels that go with that. Typically, we don't include the solar panels as part of a design. No. Because they're almost always, at least in Massachusetts, they're a third-party item that you would come on. You'd bring a vendor on who would essentially give you a guaranteed electric rate, and they would take whatever excess power, and that's how they make their profit is off the excess power that your system generates.
Yeah, if you decide to lease. Yeah, I guess I don't know if it makes sense to buy as a municipality or to lease.
Yeah, I don't think we've found that municipalities can really profit from it because there's no tax advantage, which is what generally makes it work for private entities. Developers and owners can write it off, and then that just kind of pays the bill right there. But there are plenty of third-party operators who will, if you have a big enough room, they don't want to come in and put on one panel. They want to put on as many as possible. So, and that might mean that we do some around the building, and then maybe we do some canopy storage.
There you go.
Covered parking, and that forms part of an extended solar array.
Does anyone else from the Irving side have questions?
Oh, I'm looking forward to a site visit with you all to go over our current conditions, current building and function, and what could be the next thing for Irving Highway Department.
Absolutely.
So could we pick a time for that site visit? Because I'm imagining that most of the folks on this call are going to want to be there, so we should probably post it as a meeting.
Is next week okay for most people?
Well, weather dependent.
Absolutely.
Weather dependent.
I would say later next week would be better to give us time to get plans and any surveying stuff
Sure.
together and over to you. So I don't know if folks are available next Thursday, March 4th.
It would have to be the following week because I'm out of the town Thursday and Friday.
What about Wednesday, the 3rd?
Wednesday the 3rd is good, or the Thursday the 4th in the morning, as long as I'm out by 11 o'clock.
The weather looks decent both days, at least here in the Boston area. How much
Yeah,
snow do you get on the ground?
Probably a foot or so,
Okay.
but we're probably going to lose a lot of that this week.
Yeah, we've got to warm up. I'm available Wednesday or Thursday.
Do we want to plan on a Wednesday morning meeting? Would that work for folks?
Sure.
What
Yep,
time?
I start at 5:30 in the morning.
We'll catch you around lunch at 9, I guess.
Just fair warning, you're talking to two architects. We not be John, you're an early.
Burn the candle at the other end.
Yeah, we were.
Where are you guys coming out of?
But Eastern Massachusetts, generally.
Okay.
Oh, it's probably a 2-hour ride. About that, maybe an hour, 45 minutes from where I am. 9 o'clock
Do we
is good for me. We
Plan on 10 o'clock on Wednesday?
Too.
So that's
10 is
fine.
fine.
Okay. Does that work for everyone from Irving?
At the highway, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the 3rd at 10.
Yep.
That's
all
great.
right.
As of right now, works for me.
We'll play it by
Excellent.
ear. If we get a big storm, we can reschedule.
I
We want you to be there and able to focus on it. So
Well, although on the other hand, we'd love to see the
Well, that's
operation
true, too,
when
yeah.
you have a snowstorm, because most of the time we will ask you the question. Well, we've talked about a normal day-to-day operation. What happens when you get a snowstorm? And we rarely actually see that in action. So we might come, even if you're not ready to talk to us, we'll come and watch you work.
Glenn, they want to ride along.
oh, as long as it's 6 a.m. to 5
They
p.m.
want to ride along, Glenn.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Dan, you signed up for the midnight shift.
I did. John forgot. There you go.
All right. Well, we'll say
Okay.
10 o'clock on Wednesday for now, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. And how long do you usually spend?
I probably like a couple hours, walking through and photographing and taking some spot measurements and yeah, probably a couple hours.
And we'll certainly have a few conversations in the course of that. So we'll, as we've already done in this call, we're asking you questions about programming, about space needs, about operations, and then that tends to happen whenever we're talking with you. So a little bit of that will happen, and then, as John mentioned earlier, we would set up a more formal interview, meeting or meetings to kind of go methodically through every division, every operation, so that we fully understand it. But it's good if we see what you've got now, and we can kind of understand in the context of your existing space what your space needs for the new facility you're going to do.
So I will send out an invite and post that meeting. And Pete and Glenn, if you can look for any drawings and surveys that you guys have, and if they're not electronic, then just let me know and we can figure out a way to get them over to Dan and John. I think we're all set then.
Excellent.
Okay.
Very good.
It was
Yeah.
nice to meet you both.
Well, it's nice to
meet you as well.
Thank you again for inviting us in, and we look forward to the next conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Good.
Thank
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So I will call unless folks have other comments, I will call the meeting to close at 1:47, or I have to make a motion to adjourn. So I make a motion to adjourn at 1:47.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
All right.
Is Brian still on?
I think so.
I'll start looking for stuff, Mariah, and I'll let you know what I have. for
Perfect. Thank
plans
you.
and anything electronic.
Great.
I'm sure Jackie would have stuff on the properties itself down there also.
Yeah, if you guys don't mind talking to her and gathering that, that would be great.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very
See you
much.
later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.